This video is about the kopis or kopis, which is a particular kind of sword used in the ancient world. Some of you might know it as a falsata or falcata. That's actually a more modern term, wasn't used in the ancient world, so I usually prefer kopis or kopis. Although you could call it a kukri, because this, a kukri, is actually pretty much the same thing. This is a Nepalese weapon, but really it's just a kopis from another country. This particular one is a kukri number 1, a Gurkhas for the Yusuf. So if you join the British Army in Nepal, this is what they issue you. Now, the kukri, in fact, comes in many sizes, not just this size. There are little ones and there are whopping great big ones that are apparently really handy for beheading cattle. So you've got to imagine a scaled up version of this would be used in the ancient world in battlefields, ancient Greek soldiers and so forth. Another word about the word kopis. There's another word, kopesh, which is a weapon used by the ancient Egyptians, which is extremely similar to the kopis or kopis. And now, if you go to modern Greece today, the Greeks will insist that they invented everything. But I suspect that it's probably not a coincidence that this very similar ancient Egyptian weapon, which predated the kopis, has an extremely similar name. Although it's fair to point out that so far as archaeologists know, the kopesh in Egypt went out of use long before the kopis in Greece came into use. So it could be a coincidence. Anyway, back to this. So you've got to imagine it's much bigger. So it's sort of out here. It's sort of it's sort of, you know, it's more like that sort of thing. So try to imagine that. Now, it curves forward. That's its almost defining trait. I want you to imagine that I'm holding, say, an axe or a hammer. Actually, there is a hammer here. There we go. Hang on. Right. So, if you're holding a hammer, the striking point. Let's hold it the right way around. The striking point is ahead of the knuckles. Now, if that were not ergonomically good, hammers wouldn't be made this shape. If the striking point ergonomically were most efficient back here, then that's where it would be, and you would curve the handle perhaps to make that possible. Now, if you can just overlay one of these two things over the other, can you see that the striking point on this hammer is roughly where the striking point here would be if I chopped something with this? So this is actually ergonomically a very efficient chopper. It's like an axe, really, only it's a sword as well. It's a sort of halfway house between sword and axe. It's got much of the punch of an axe, but it's also got more wieldiness that you might associate with a sword. But it's not as wieldy as a sword, and perhaps not quite as punchy as an axe. So, you know, that's essentially what one of these is. Now, if you had an axe and you hit someone's arm, actually this is very sharp, so I'll use this, which is not quite so sharp. If you were to hit an arm or whatever with that part of an axe, that would just be the blunt wooden haft, and so that probably wouldn't hurt all that much. But this, it's got a cut, and as you carry on through, you're cutting on to that meaty bit of the blade in the one continuing movement. This is extremely effective at severing limbs and lopping bits off people. You can catch someone here and just keep going and cut, ow. And this, it's a heavy sword, has got a lot of hacking power. So if you're up against someone with a shield, and by and large that would be the case if you're using one of these, then you could reach round their shield and just from the wrist deliver a really powerful whack chop. You would not want to be on the receiving end of this. As for the thrust, yeah, it's got a definite point on it, and because it's slightly forwards, it's got more of a punch. If I want to hurt you with my fist, I will punch you that way rather than sort of hit upwards like that. You can, of course, stab up with a straight long sword, but if you've got a forward curve to a weapon, it's slightly closer to a punch forwards. So a little bit more punch in your stab, and an awful lot of cut. It is a compromised weapon, though. It's not as wieldy as a sword. You would definitely not want to use this without a shield, because you'd want something to parry with and keep yourself safe. One interesting thing about the design of this hilt is, can you see it's fatter at the top than at the bottom? So when I grip it, that naturally pulls it that way slightly in my hand. You would think, wouldn't you, that in tune with the curvature of the blade, you might want to hold it more like that way in your hand, but because of the design of the handle, it goes actually more that way. I don't know why that should be. I admit that that's a mystery to me. It's a perfectly comfortable handle, and just holding this in my hand, you really feel tempted to hit something with it, because I can just feel this would do a huge amount of damage. So perhaps not as wieldy as a sword, but if you, for rather dubious reasons, frankly questionable, but if you really must decapitate every last meter copulator in the room, well, accept no substitute.
He copped me with a kopis, not a kopesh, in the kopis, and I couldn't cope.
Immediately after videoing that last bit, I had this thought about why the handle might be designed this way. If you can imagine a sort of best fit line between here and the tip, it would go through somewhere around this point here. I think by having the handle as it is, it brings that best fit line in line with your hand, which perhaps means that this behaves in the hand when you grip with the whole hand a bit more like a straight sword, making it slightly less unwieldy. Whereas if you want to get full benefit of the chop, all you need to do is just relax these bottom two fingers, which actually, once you've started the chop, aren't doing that much, and just let the thing fall through. So maybe you get the full benefit of the chop, well, most of the benefit of the chop, with a slight increase in wieldiness, and perhaps that's why the handle was designed that way. The handle hilt end, by the way, this one has a horse's head on it. Horses and birds are very common